My name is Lisa Ann Gallagher, and I'm an author, content creator, and the founder of Archetypes of Success, a platform dedicated to helping entrepreneurs build businesses that are not just profitable, but personally meaningful. Long before I knew any of those titles would one day belong to me, I was a 17-year-old girl in Detroit, sitting cross-legged on the floor of my bedroom, surrounded by glue sticks, scraps of paper, and the loud, hopeful noise of punk music playing on the stereo beside me. I didn't wait for someone to give me permission to be a writer. I just started writing. I created my own fanzine, typing out interviews with local and touring musicians, editing by hand, printing and stapling copies together to pass out at shows, and hoping local record shops would sell them on consignment. I infuriated my mother every time she looked at my carpet strewn with tiny scraps of paper. I had no marketing plan, nor an audience waiting. I only had a stubborn belief that it mattered. Growing up the oldest of three girls in a city where mom and pop businesses held neighborhoods together gave me an early understanding of entrepreneurship that wasn't about jargon or hustle culture. It was about survival. It was about making something that people needed and believed in. It was about building and supporting community. I've always been a very good observer. I heard which voices carried weight and which ones were pushed to the edges. I understood early that if you didn't tell your own story, someone else would tell it for you. Or worse, it would never get told at all. Amidst the noise of scratchy garage alternative music, I discovered songs that were pure poetry and punk prose. That music catalyzed me in ways I'm still unpacking today and cemented my early declaration to be a writer and to give voice to the necessary, maybe even to find respect. My early work life didn't look impressive, however, on paper. I spent years in lower level administration, learning how organizations break down when communication falters and how leadership stumbles when connection is missing. I didn't chase a glamorous career. I moved a lot. I gathered experiences the way I once collected Pez dispensers, sharing the candy during sweaty late-night dance-offs downtown. What I didn't realize during my first years as a working woman was that I was already building something bigger than a resume. I was building a life story. Then in 2000, I got my first serious gig, a job with General Motors as an in-dealer product trainer for Cadillac in Texas and the surrounding states. It was a role that demanded more than memorizing vehicle specifications. This was not the glamorous auto show circuit where models point out the top features under bright spotlights. I had to walk into dealerships filled with seasoned salespeople, many of them older than me, most of them men, and hold the room without trying to outpitch or out-bravado anyone. I had to build trust quickly, not by performing better, but by connecting faster. I had to literally pop open the hood, explain what engines and transmission options that each model came with and how it compared with its competitors, and not bore anyone to death. One of my most memorable assignments was at a six-pack dealership, a place that carried the full GM lineup in the panhandle of Texas. They mostly thrived on selling pickup trucks. They could order Cadillacs for customers, but rarely did. When I arrived, 4 salesmen stood waiting for me inside the showroom. All of them were over 50, all dressed in Western shirts, starched jeans, cowboy boots, and suspicious expressions. They didn't have to say it out loud for me to know what they were thinking. Little lady, what are you going to teach us about Cadillacs? I could have tightened up, could have overcompensated with formal speech and canned data, but I didn't. I stayed grounded in what I knew. I met them where they were. I took off my blazer, bantered for a few minutes, then popped open the hood of a DeVille. I asked questions about them, about the store and their community, about local customers and their needs. When I shifted to talking about the car, I connected features to the situations they cared about. Say you're driving down to Lubbock, ... I showed them how knowing the product could help them close sales and solve real-world problems. And I gave each of them my business card and told them to call me anytime they had a question or needed help. By the time we finished, they were grabbing a soda, a styrofoam cup, and ice for me, asking me to sit down and treating me like someone they respected. Not because I dazzled them with a perfect presentation, but because I made them part of the story. I gave them something they could step into. Experiences like that didn't just teach me how to communicate. They taught me what real leadership actually looks like. It's the ability to connect, not perform. It's the willingness to stretch without losing yourself. I spent several years training in the Texas region and surrounding states before I transferred to the West Coast. And then 2 years later, I quit. I didn't leave Cadillac and corporate life with some 5-point plan or a perfectly worded resignation letter. I left because I was exhausted, not just from the travel, but from performing someone else's version of success. My presentations had become canned, and I was starting to feel that success no longer meant corporate achievement. Like so many women raised to be capable and composed, I had mastered the art of showing up for others, but I hadn't yet learned how to show up fully for myself. I moved to Rapid City, South Dakota, of all wild places, choosing to slow down. What I didn't realize was that I was laying the groundwork for a whole new career moonshot. At first, I assumed I'd just take a decent job while dabbling in writing. Less focus on ambition, more passion on creativity. I got serious about my talents. I hunkered down between 2007 and 2010 and finished my first novel, publishing it that same year. Then another book, then another. I self-published and used social media to market my works to a small degree of success. 4 years after my first book was released, a friend asked me to meet her for coffee. She was getting ready to start a women's business network and thought I might enjoy it in order to further promote my books. I joined, and within weeks, other members began asking me for advice. Not about fiction writing, but about content. They had seen my social media posts and had questions. I listened. They didn't just want advice, they wanted to be seen and heard. For their businesses to make an impact. They understood that language skills were required, but running a business was already a full-time job for them. Could I step in and help them? Could I freelance and support small business in my community? Hell yes. I started small, some professional bios for a local architecture firm, a couple of resumes, editing some marketing reports for a family member getting her degree. Then in 2016, I had the opportunity to speak on the TEDx stage in Rapid City. My talk was called The Moral Imperative to Know, Live, and Share Your Story. And it was about my personal journey as an author. It was the first time I stood in front of an audience and said, without apology, that story isn't optional. It's essential. That knowing and sharing your story isn't self-indulgence, it's service. Because when we're willing to live out loud, to be known, we make space for others to do the same. I did not realize that I was mapping a new professional future for myself. What came next wasn't a linear climb, but a series of beautifully messy iterations. I built a freelance business. I found my people. Later, I created Archetypes of Success because I didn't want to coach people into someone else's blueprint. I wanted to help them build their own. I saw how storytelling, when fused with the clarity of archetypes, created not just better messaging, but real transformation. Today, I work with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, creatives, outlaws, and quiet leaders, those who never felt like they belonged in corporate rooms, but damn well belong at the head of the table. I'm not here to teach you to sound like me. I'm here to help you sound like you, clearer, louder, and more powerful than you ever thought possible.